BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello, Nedheads. Hello, Black Box Battalion. Welcome to the show. In this episode, I will be discussing the disappearance of Amy Bradley from 1998, and the motivation for this one is very simple. I received multiple requests from you guys, the listeners of BBOR, to do an episode on Amy Bradley's case. And I was very surprised because this is a channel that focuses on unsolved mysteries, but I mostly talk about the Zodiac Killer, Jack the Ripper, and D.B. Cooper. But it appears that there was a recent Netflix documentary that came out about a woman who disappeared from a cruise ship back in 1998. And what could have happened? What are the major theories? What are the suspicious circumstances in regards to her disappearance? Let's go through all of it. But as you see, this is one that was requested by one of the listeners. Multiple listeners, actually. So if you have any ideas for future episodes of Black Box Online Radio, you can put them in the comments section down below. For larger things, you can send them to me at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. And of course, you can like and subscribe. But to provide a very brief introduction and background, even though I'm a newcomer to the story of Amy Bradley, I've talked about some similar cases on Black Box Online Radio in the past, most notably the disappearance of Natalie Holloway and also the disappearance of Sudiksha Konanki. And I found that there was a human trafficking angle that was presented in both of those stories. But there didn't seem to be a lot of physical evidence to support that, and to be very frank, I never liked the human trafficking angles in either one of those cases. But with the disappearance of Amy Bradley, it actually appears that there is some substantial evidence that could indicate that she was a victim of human trafficking, that she was abducted from her cruise ship and then taken onto the island of Curacao, and then she was forced to work in a type of prostitution-related slavery. Absolutely terrible to even think about the concept. But to be very brief, with the disappearance of Natalie Holloway, I never liked the human trafficking angle because I think all of the evidence indicated that she was killed by Joran van der Sloot, the last man to see her alive, and I think that his most recent confession is the most accurate one, where he said they were sitting on a beach together, he tried to escalate physical intimacy, she rejected him, she kneed him in the crotch, so he decided to kick her in the head, just retaliating, but he realized that he did something that would have some very big repercussions for him, so he put her body into the water, and he never saw her again. And with the disappearance of Sudiksha, I think that there's an 80% chance that that was just an accidental drowning. And I don't mean to make light of the issue or anything. There is a 20% chance that there was foul play, because again, she was last seen on a beach with somebody, but they were both heavily intoxicated, and they were in the ocean, they got hit by a wave, they tried to get back to shore, and the man that she was with thought that she was able to get out to the beach of the ocean, get onto the beach by herself. He gets to a lounge chair and just passes out because, again, he's intoxicated, and it's quite possible that another wave struck her, pulled her back in. Now, there's some suspicious circumstances, such as this guy fell asleep without checking on her. He also returned to the hotel without his shirt. But losing your t-shirt in the ocean does not make you a murderer. But let's get to the disappearance of Amy Bradley. In 1998, Amy Bradley was going on a cruise with her family. She was with her father, Ron, her mother, Iva, and her brother, Brad. And I just have to say, Brad Bradley is an awesome name. Now, they were on this cruise that was paid for by Ron's company, more or less, and it was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime. While they were on the cruise, it appeared that Amy was receiving a lot of attention from other men, most notably a musician, the bass player in a band, whose name was Alistair, but his nickname was Yellow, and I found that some sources are hesitant to share his image, as well as to use his full name, so I'm simply going to refer to him as Yellow in this episode. And there was also a server on the cruise ship that was paying a lot of attention to Amy. Now, on the night of her disappearance, it was reported that Amy had been previously drinking, but she was not overly intoxicated by the early AM hours. To help us out, we're going to go over to the timeline that has been posted at thetab.com. At 3:35 in the morning, Brad, that's her brother, returned to the family cabin, and his keycard was electronically logged in. This is one of the few strong pieces of physical evidence in the case because these keycard swipes are electronically logged. When someone is going in and when someone is going out, these things were logged. And Amy was also reported to carry her keycard with her everywhere she went. The main things that she would keep close to her were the not hotel keycard, but the cabin keycard, her cigarettes, and her lighter. At 3:40 in the morning, Amy followed 5 minutes later. She and Brad sat on the private balcony before Brad went to bed, and Amy stayed outside a while longer. At 5:15 to 5:30 a.m., Ron Bradley saw Amy for the last time. And then Ron is the father. Then Ron woke briefly and he looked out the balcony, and he later stated that he could see Amy's legs stretched out on the lounge chair and assumed that she was asleep. He closed his eyes again. At 5:30 to 5:45 a.m., witnesses reported seeing Amy on the upper deck. 3 separate witnesses later told the authorities that they saw Amy on the upper deck with Alistair, also known as Yellow. She was reportedly holding a camera and was handed a dark drink. Douglas was then seen leaving the area shortly after 6 a.m. At 6 a.m., Amy was gone. Ron woke up again and noticed that Amy was no longer on the balcony. Her shoes were still in the cabin, but her cigarettes and her lighter were missing. And at 6:30 a.m., the family alerted the staff. And there are multiple documentary episodes that are available on YouTube in addition to the Netflix one. There's also one called Killer Cruise Ships. And this is focusing on these types of stories. And I'm going to be citing several different sources throughout the duration of this episode. So immediately, if you were just to read that little segment right there that I just shared from the tab, that would sound like, well, this individual, the musician Alistair Yellow, was somebody who is the prime suspect. He was bothering her. He was showing some interest in her. And there's even one report that was shared from her brother in an interview that he grabbed Amy by the chest in a very awkward way, and she just laughed it off. And there's also that server that I mentioned that was paying a lot of attention to Amy too. Now, there was a video that was shared on Cruise Ship Killers that did indeed feature Yellow and Amy dancing together. So this whole thing about how if he were to deny everything, there is videographic evidence that he was spending time with her, and maybe she went along with some things to be polite, but she also had no interest in him. Now, you also heard from that segment from the tab that when she left, her shoes were not present. Does that also suggest that someone was being very casual? I mean, to the people who think that she was abducted, they would just simply say that that's probably something that was normal for her to walk around a hallway without shoes on. And to the people who think that some type of accident took place, that's just the linchpin, that's the cornerstone. They're like, somebody, is going to walk around even a hotel or in a lobby, they're going to take their shoes if it's an unfamiliar place. A cruise ship, exactly the same. You're going to take your shoes if you're going up to meet somebody. But as you heard from that little segment, there are multiple eyewitness accounts of people who claim that they saw Amy after 5:30 in the morning when her father was asleep. Did she wake up, get her cigarettes and lighter and the key, leave the room, and was just never seen or heard from again? Did she go up and meet somebody? And this becomes the foundation of the human trafficking angle. Was Amy lured to someplace on the cruise ship under some type of false pretense, or was she even possibly drugged? You heard she was drinking the liquid in the dark-colored liquid in a cup, and then she was just put under some type of inebriated mental state. And then when the ship docked in Curacao, she was taken off the ship, and that, again, maybe she's groggy, can barely walk. Maybe she had no idea what she was doing. She was just susceptible. And then she was forced into a type of human slavery, prostitution, some type of human trafficking ring in Curacao. Normally, I would not even entertain a type of theory like that, but in this case, there are actual pieces of physical evidence. A Canadian tourist claimed that he saw a woman who was trying to get his attention. She was on the beach and she was being escorted by 2 rough-looking men, and it seemed like she was trying to pay attention to specific tattoos on her body so she could let him know that she had some type of markers. One of Amy's tattoos was very distinct. She had a Tasmanian devil playing basketball because it was something that she had done to mark a basketball achievement in her life. And there was also a sighting of a Navy sailor who went to a brothel, and he claimed that he had a conversation with a woman, and she confessed that her name was Amy Bradley, and that she was trying to share this information with him, but he didn't come forward for 3 years because he was afraid of being punished and repercussions for attending the brothel. Now, there are some problems that exist with these theories. There are also other witness sightings of Amy, and there also is a photo that would come out where some people claim that a woman who was on an escort website using the name of Jazz has a very strong resemblance to Amy's appearance. And Court TV even featured somebody who said that the FBI has verified this photo of Jazz being the same person as Amy Bradley. But I heard on a different channel called Carolina Little, which I'm going to be referencing later on in the episode, that it's not that the FBI has verified that, they just said that there's a high probability that Jazz and Amy Bradley are the same person. We're going to talk a lot about the photo in a second, but I wanted to just share my explorations into this process. After watching the Cruise Ship Killers episode, I also wanted to check out the video from Simon Whistler. He is a YouTuber who runs like 9 different channels. He's extremely overworked, but he also has a very odd presentation style where, because he has so many channels, he does not preview any of his material. He just sits down with a script and takes a look at it. And this, I think, allows him to develop a very clear-headed type of thinking. He's very inside the box, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. But he was someone who pointed out several key things. There are witness sightings of Amy outside the cabin after 5:30 a.m. on the date of her disappearance. Well, if these people did not specifically know Amy Bradley prior to the disappearance, how could they be certain that that was Amy? Could that not have just been a Caucasian woman with a similar appearance, someone who had similar features, and they just simply thought that it was Amy Bradley after she went missing? Or maybe they just got their dates mixed up, their times mixed up, because if they didn't know that she was missing yet, they wouldn't have been programmed to think that way. That's the first observation that he made. And also with the human trafficking angle, he pointed out that it seems rather odd that they would target a victim on a cruise ship for human trafficking when there would be so many tourists who would already be in Curacao, who would be in much more vulnerable places. We'll come back to that one as well. And this just seemed like a very unlikely setup. And then people start saying, well, that's why Alistair was involved with this. That's why Yellow was involved with this. Maybe even the server was involved. And then it's like, okay, so you have the bass player, a musician, and you have the server, who are some type of scouts for the human trafficking ring. I mean, this is starting to get complicated. And Simon Whistler was not having any of it. He said this seems like a case of accidental drowning, where somebody was leaning over the railing, and they fell off the cruise ship, and they landed in the water. And at the time, they should have been about 70 miles from Curacao, which would have been way too far for somebody to swim. But the Coast Guard did search for Amy for 4 days. They were not able to find her. And also, Amy was reported to have had a fear of heights, and the railings went up to her chest. That's one detail that her mother recalls very clearly, that the railings were chest high for Amy. So this really doesn't seem like something where somebody would fall over accidentally. And if somebody's afraid of heights, are they going to jump off? Well, Simon Whistler's ultimate conclusion was, it sounds like she had been drinking the night before, and she was feeling sick, and that she leaned over the railing because she wanted to throw up, she wanted to vomit, and she fell off. I'm going to share something on a very personal note. I am someone who does not like heights at all. I have 2 main phobias. One of them is heights, the other one's a secret. You can guess in the comments section down below. But as far as being afraid of heights, I mean, firstly, I get mostly bothered when I'm at a high place and there are other people around me. I have no problems with airplanes. I've also been bungee jumping, for some reason, extremely high elevations. don't bother me. And I think this is true with a lot of people because it's just you're so far removed from the concept of height. But yes, being on an 11-deck tall cruise ship, that is something that would definitely bother my fear of heights, with one exception. One exception. If I were sick, I probably would lean over the railing to vomit. I mean, that is something where the need to vomit would surpass the phobia of heights. And also, as I said, I mostly get it when other people around me. If I'm by myself, the fear of heights is much less intense. And if Amy had been drinking the night before, even if she was not drunk, she could have been hung over. And I mean, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that this is a very simple case, that there's no human trafficking ring going on, and that this is just the case of a woman who got sick on a cruise ship? She leaned over the railing to vomit, and then she just fell, and they were unable to locate her? Let me know in the comments section down below. I'm genuinely curious what you think. So there was another presentation that was put out by a channel called We Will Kill You. I had to do a double take on that name, and I hope they didn't actually title their channel that, and my memory got a little bit clouded. I was like, We Will Kill You. And what they decided to do was, they wanted to put the probabilities of the outcomes into ChatGPT. What is the most likely outcome in this scenario? Was this an accidental death? As I just said, Amy fell over. Was this a suicide? Amy jumped over by herself. Was this a human trafficking ring? And as far as an accidental death, they estimated that it was about 15 to 30%. The odds of somebody falling off a cruise ship accidentally were 1 in 1.3 million, based on the number of passengers per year that fall over the cruise ship railings. 1 in 1.3 million. But they put that into ChatGPT, and it said 15 to 30% chance that she died accidentally. What is the chance of a suicide? 5%, a 5% chance that Amy voluntarily jumped over the edge. And what is the chance of an abduction or something involving the human trafficking circles? 70%. Now that's just ChatGPT, but they shared those figures. I want to be very clear about something. If you have, let's even make this mathematically accurate, 25% chance that there was an accident, a 5% chance that there was a suicide, and a 70% chance of an abduction, then does that mean that an accident is impossible? No, absolutely not. 25%? I mean, if you have 4 items and you put them in a bag, one of them is blue, 3 are red, and there's a very, very small one that is going to be green. And you move your hands around in there, and then you just pull up one item, you could very easily pull up the blue item, because you could also pull up the red item or the green item. It would not be a shocker in any of those situations. 25% is not impossible. It's not zero. It doesn't rule things out. And even if ChatGPT does provide results like that, it does not mean that it couldn't happen, that she actually did accidentally die. And what I think ChatGPT does is a lot like the other AI apps, where they take information from the internet and they look at all of these things, like the witness sightings, as well as the possible locations of Amy in Curacao, and the possibility of her being on an escort website under the name Jazz, and they incorporate those things. But as Simon Whistler pointed out, all of that stuff is unconfirmed. Now, there's another video that was put out by a YouTuber named Carolina Little, and I was not very familiar with her channel. That was the first video that I watched from her. I really didn't know what to expect, but she was just a model of clarity. I mean, she really had some brilliant true crime insights. The first thing she said was that to understand the scene of this disappearance, it is an absolute shame that we don't have more reliable photos and diagrams, because this actually creates the perspective. And one thing that was apparently shared by Netflix is a table was pushed to the railing, right up against the edge of the railing. And she said, for her, that would suggest that there was some incident where you would have Amy Bradley getting up on the table and then trying to lean over the edge, again, possibly to vomit. And Carolina Little also shared something from her personal experiences, and that is that when somebody is hung over, the absolute best cure is the breeze, like fresh air. The reason why she would not be sleeping in bed or not trying to be near the toilet if she felt sick, she would be wanting the fresh air. And I do mostly agree with that. So that's why she's outside. That's why there'd be this witness sighting of her. Is this the case of a woman who was overwhelmed with a sense of nausea? And then she started leaning on the table, maybe even kneeling on it, putting her knees on there. Like she wouldn't be standing up straight, but she's just kneeling on the table, leaning over the edge. And that's how she was able to get up so high. And then she fell because, again, she was trying to vomit and she just went too far. She didn't realize that she didn't have a strong footing or strong kneeling, and she fell over the edge. That's the way that Carolina Little was going. She was also talking about how Amy would have removed her overshirt, and she should have only been wearing a undershirt that would be a type of t-shirt. So you have somebody who did not have their overshirt, they did not have their shoes. This, it's a very convincing case for me that this is somebody who was voluntarily getting up on the table, and then they jumped over the edge. Amy's cigarettes and lighter were missing, and Carolina Little just simply said that those were missing because most likely they were just in her pockets or on her person at the time when she went overboard, and they went with her. It could even be in her hand. That could also be a reason why she wasn't getting a firm grip on the railing. And I have just told you that even though I have a phobia of heights, I would do something like that if I were trying to throw up, because your instinct is not to throw up on the floor, or on the deck rather, if we're talking about a ship. There's also a video that was put out there by Dr. Todd Grande, and I first learned about Dr. Todd Grande back in 2019, and in the past he used to do a lot of things that were really focused on just aspects of psychology, talking about the big 5 personality traits. Then his channel shifted more to current events where his quality went down a little bit. He would do things where it's like a 12-minute video just talking about some person that was on the news, and he would provide this overly detailed 8-minute explanation, and then just four minutes of very, very bland commentary. But his video on Amy Bradley was actually pretty good, and I think it's because he's done a video on her in the past, and he did a follow-up one after the Netflix documentary. And he pointed out just some very key things, and that is that, number one, Amy Bradley would not be the type of person that would be pulled into the world of human trafficking, because, firstly, she's on a cruise ship, and they would have access to people on the island or in other parts of the Caribbean, and number two, the people that get lured into these types of events are more likely to be on the outside of society. He really reinforced this point multiple times when he said that they would be somebody who would be facing economic hardship, they wouldn't have strong family connections, as well as perhaps just living in very poor circumstances. And Amy Bradley didn't meet any of those things. She was on a cruise ship with her family, and, they had people that would have been looking for her, and she would just be the wrong type of person to try and abduct and lure off the ship and bring to Curacao for a human trafficking operation. So that's another strike against that. But this part absolutely shocked me. And that was when Dr. Todd Grande said that he did not believe that this was an accident. This wasn't just somebody who got up on a table, kneeling over the edge, trying to throw up. He thought that this was a suicide. And he said that he had made a video about Amy Bradley in the past, and he thought at that time that this was a very clear case of an accidental drowning. Somebody fell over the edge. But then he said in the Netflix documentary, they actually showed that she was actually dealing with a lot of emotional stress in her personal life, and he thought that maybe she just had a moment where she had some type of break from reality and decided that that was the time, or there could have been some type of instigating factor, and she decided to voluntarily jump over the edge. Now think about those ChatGPT results, 25%, 5%, 70%. He would say that 5% is actually what happened. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that just a moment of emotional stress and duress drove somebody to commit suicide in this situation? Please let me know in the comments section down below. Now we're going to get to the photo. And this is a photo of a woman using the name Jazz that was posted on an escort website. There's also a channel out there called True Crime This Week that features somebody who may know the person in the photo. Let's just clear some things up. This person has a very strong resemblance to Amy Bradley, and there was even a guy that appeared on Court TV who claims to be a member of law enforcement that does specialize in these types of human trafficking operations. He said he's researched the photo. There's no doubt in his mind that this is indeed Amy Bradley in the photo, that she is Jazz. Jazz can be spelled J-A-Z-Z or J-A-S. And I was a little bit surprised that he would say that so adamantly without providing any supporting details and information. And this is something that, just he says he's researched it and he concluded that she was Jazz. Okay, why don't you tell us how you research this? This is something that experts like to do. They like to keep all of the information for themselves. So when I looked at this photo for the first time, again, this was on Cruise Ship Killers. They just put it up on the screen. I pause and I look and I think, all right, there's a very clear resemblance between Amy Bradley and Jazz. But at the same time, I've looked at cases like this before as well, most notably Tara Calico, who was the Polaroid girl, or let's be clear, the Polaroid mystery. With the case of Tara Calico, she went missing, and a Polaroid photo was found in a different state. She went missing from the Southwest, and the Polaroid photo was found in the parking lot in Florida of two children that appear to be bound. They have duct tape over their mouths. In one of them, the girl in the photo heavily resembles Tara Calico. And somebody even wrote out in the comment section, why are people acting like this is a mystery? Obviously that's her in the photo and that she was kidnapped. That was the explanation for her disappearance. But upon closer inspection, it appeared to me that Tara Calico and the girl in the Polaroid are different people. They have different facial features, very different eye socket formations, and also, if I can be very honest with you guys, I don't even think that the Polaroid photo is a real kidnapping. It doesn't take too much imagination to think of a father trying to play a prank on the mother, where he's telling his two kids, his daughter and his son, okay, put your arms behind your back, because they are seemingly bound. You don't even see any real restraints, and the boy almost looks like he's smiling underneath the duct tape. I think that photo was a prank if I had to weigh the options, and I don't think that it was Tara Calico. But this is what I'm coming to in regards to these photos. Because with the Polaroid mystery, the FBI said that that was not Tara Calico in the photo. Scotland Yard in the United Kingdom said that it was. Expert A, Expert B, Agency A, Agency B. Even if the FBI made a blanket statement across the board and said 100% that Jazz and Amy Bradley are the same person, would I believe that? No. You do not need one agency. You need 3 or 4 agencies all coming to agreement, providing very specific information and telling you that this is the same person, telling you how they did it, explaining how they did it. That's my take on the subject, and that's something that I take to the bank. More importantly, I would also like to point out that there is something that I noticed about Jazz and Amy Bradley, and that is that Jazz seems to have a smaller nose, and Amy Bradley seems to have a more hook-shaped nose. Now, the photo of Jazz surfaced in 2005, 7 years after Amy Bradley's disappearance. But if she were brought into human trafficking and sexual slavery, she should be older in the photo. Normally your nose gets older with time, not smaller. So that's also a strike against this being Jazz and Amy being the same person. And lastly, there's a channel out there called This Week in True Crime. I always do that. True Crime This Week. I always get that channel's name backwards for some reason. But anyway, maybe they need a better name, like Black Box Online Radio. And on True Crime This Week, there was a woman who was interviewed who claimed that she knew who the woman in the photo was, and that she had actually come forward with this information about a month before the Netflix documentary had been released. She hadn't even watched the Netflix documentary. So she claimed. And she said that the woman named Jazz was somebody she knew from an apartment complex in South Daytona, Florida. We're not even talking about the Caribbean. And this woman, Jazz, was someone who was more or less voluntarily living as an escort, or by their own term, high-end call girl. Again, she knew her in the apartment complex. She would frequent the pool. She had a bunch of rules that she had to follow for the man that was looking after her. I'm tempted to use the word pimp, but she could only wear a bikini or lingerie if she were in the house. She had to wear lingerie if she was at the pool. She had to wear a bikini. She always had to wear high heels. And that's how this woman, whose name is Rebecca Aliff, found Jazz in the first place. She saw her at the pool, and she's wearing a pair of high heels at the pool, and she's like, "Well, that's so weird. Why would somebody do that?" Starts asking some questions. One thing leads to another, and ultimately she ends up, gets to visit their home. She recalls an enormous amount of detail, an enormous amount of information, saying, "Oh, they had beige-colored walls." Also, her pimp, for lack of a better term, I hate using that term, but that's what it appears this guy was, said that her name isn't even Jazz, it's Susan, and that this woman Susan was a high-end call girl, but he thought that Jazz would have been a more suitable name for a high-end call girl. That just depends on who you believe. This comes back to another insightful statement from Carolina Little, and that is that these stories are only valuable if there's other supporting evidence to connect them to. Like, for example, if somebody is an eyewitness, eyewitness testimony is not circumstantial evidence. Eyewitness testimony is direct evidence. But in regards to a missing persons case like this, you would need to partner it with some other type of supporting evidence. Otherwise, it's just a wild story. Did this woman who's going on the channel this week in True Crime, or True Crime This Week, whatever it's called, did she actually know the real woman in that photo? Did she actually know her, or is she just getting her memories crossed and confused? She claims that she did. She has an amazingly detailed story talking about the colors of their paint and wallpaper or whatever they are. But did she actually do that, or is this just imaginative? The people who saw Amy Bradley after she should have been in her cabin, did she actually go up on the elevator with Alistair Yellow and start drinking something? I mean, or did they just get a few things confused? Maybe they saw someone with a similar appearance. Maybe they didn't see her at all. Maybe they saw Amy Bradley the day before. They got their times mixed up. That one happens so frequently in true crime cases. So I think you guys can tell where I stand. I went into this episode thinking that there actually was a possibility of the human trafficking angle, that this evidence and these stories of Amy Bradley working in Curacao in the human trafficking circles actually had some plausibility. And after, about several days of looking into the story, it also seems that they're a little bit less probable. I think that Amy would have been a very improbable target for human trafficking. I think that with the amount of people looking for her, certain things would have caused calamities. And also, just even about how she's just so easily able to communicate with people against her will, saying that she's Amy Bradley from the United States. I doubt that a lot of those stories actually happened word for word. Instead, I think that it's a combination of somebody having real conversations with people. There are these real disturbing sightings, and that the witnesses are connecting the dots in their own way. It's almost like invented false memories, but I think it's just they're arranging the information in a way that makes sense to them, and that really was not really going to give us any clarity about Amy Bradley's disappearance. So in terms of likelihood, I would rank the possibilities as accidental death, number 1. She leaned over the edge because she was sick, fell over. Number 2, suicide. I would disagree with Dr. Todd Grande that is the primary focus. And number 3 would be human trafficking and or abduction. What do you think about the disappearance of Amy Bradley? And I also have to point out that Carolina Little said that on her channel, she received a lot of pushback. She received a lot of negative feedback for going against the human trafficking angle. But, I mean, she was just sharing what she genuinely thought, as am I here. I've told you guys exactly what I think about the case of Amy Bradley. Let me know in the comments section down below. One more time, you can hit the like button and subscribe if you want to follow along with these true crime discussions. Black Box Online Radio comes to you Monday through Friday, where I talk about the Zodiac Killer, JonBenet Ramsey, Jack the Ripper, the Black Dahlia Murder, and D.B. Cooper. And if you're curious about these cases, I invite you to check out some of my other content here on this channel, and you can support all of these efforts by going over to buymeacoffee.com. Buymeacoffee.com/blackboxned88 allows you to make a donation or contribution to help the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout-out on Zodiac Monday. That's all for me now. Until next time.